perfect for the Wimmera Plains. In the next hour or so, expect it to warm to 22 with overcast skies, climbing to 31 by afternoon under broken clouds. Down there in Yarriambiack Shire, about 320 kilometers northwest of Melbourne, sits Minyip, a town of around 500 souls proudly calling itself the heart of the wheat belt. Settled by Europeans in the 1870s, its lifeblood is dryland grain farming, with silos and vast golden fields defining the landscape. At the town's center stands a rare monument to William Ferrer, the father of Australia's wheat industry. His early strains revolutionized farming here. Stroll the Minyip Heritage Walk to admire Edwardian gems like the 1907 Club Hotel and 1908 Commercial Hotel, their wrought iron lacework and lead-light windows whispering of boom times. The Old Violet's General Store adds that vintage charm. Film crews have even used the streets as sets, capturing its timeless vibe. Nature lovers hit the Minyip Bushland Reserve or wetlands for birdwatching and quiet trails, while Saddler's Second Chance offers a quirky animal sanctuary nearby. The name? Aboriginal for ashes or camping place, a nod to ancient campfires amid the plains. It's the sort of spot where progress hums through community projects by the local association, and a caravan park keeps visitors comfy. Small, but with stories in every brick. Makes you want to detour for a wheatfield drive, doesn't it? Right now Cora's having one of those mild Wimmera mornings, low 20s, overcast, a bit of breeze. The sort of weather locals use to get jobs done before the real heat builds later in the day. Cora itself is a tiny rural district in the northern Grampians, more a patchwork of farms and old family properties than a town. Grain and grazing have long been the backbone here. Broadacre crops, sheep, and some cattle spread across gently undulating country that starts to rise toward the Grampians to the south and west. For a place this small, Cora carries a surprising amount of history. The name is of Aboriginal origin, recorded among Western Victorian place names, a reminder that this was Jejuwaring country long before fence lines and survey pegs went in. Later, families like the Crosses held substantial land here. One local history, the Grand Old Man of Cora, traces a farmer's life from the goldfields to marrying into a Cora landowning clan, which gives you a feel for how the area grew out of that gold rush era into stable pastoral holdings. At the heart of community life is the Cora Memorial Hall, a solid brick and render hall built by local volunteers to honor district soldiers of the Boer War and the First World War. 16 men from this tiny district served in the Great War, and even one death in the Boer War is marked in local records. For a scattered farming community, those were heavy sacrifices, and Anzac events still pivot around that hall. Cora doesn't have cafes on every corner. Instead, the charm is in quiet back roads, windmills, and big skies, with the Grampians and regional centers like St. Arnaud and Stahl within easy reach for supplies, sport, and a proper country bakery stop. It's the kind of place you remember not for a single landmark, but for how small places quietly hold onto big stories. As we cruise along at this early morning hour near Lockwood South, it's a mild 21 degrees Celsius with overcast clouds hanging low, humidity around 60%, and a gentle 7-mile-per-hour breeze. Perfect for pondering the quiet charms below. Lockwood South is a sleepy rural locality in Victoria's Greater Bendigo region, straddling the city of Greater Bendigo and Mount Alexander Shire, about 80 miles northwest of Melbourne. Picture vast farmlands dotted with grazing sheep and crops, where the local economy hums around agriculture and some lingering gold rush echoes. Bendigo Creek nearby once glittered with nuggets back in the 1850s. It's got that classic temperate oceanic climate, with warm summers averaging low 80s Fahrenheit, cool winters dipping to the 40s, and reliable spring rains greening everything up. Folks here, around 800 in the broader Lockwood area, enjoy a laid-back life, with quality spots for families seeking space from city bustle. Head a short drive to Bendigo for its stunning Gold-era architecture, like the Shamrock Hotel or Sacred Heart Cathedral, or explore Mount Alexander's historic Malden, famed for its perfectly preserved 19th-century streetscape and antique shops. Trivia nugget: This area is dotted with old mine shafts. Locals joke about the golden potholes that still surprise drivers after rain. And keep an eye out for unique vernacular farm buildings, those sturdy bluestone sheds from pioneer days, whispering tales of hardy settlers. It's the kind of place where the horizon feels endless, ideal for a detour if you're chasing authentic Aussie countryside. The state's heritage register. Think sturdy bluestone walls and wide verandas whispering tales of 19th century squatters who carved out lives from the bush. The area's economy hums around agriculture and hobby farms, with real estate drawing city escapees to properties under $500,000 for a slice of high country calm. The whole Shire topped Victoria's quality of life rankings back in 2008 for its fresh air and low-key vibe. Summers here bake warm and dry, around 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, flipping to crisp winters with frosts that dust the hills white, perfect for wood fires and woolly jumpers. Nearby, Kyneton's antique shops and the Grand Hanging Rock pull day trippers, while local cafes serve hearty scones with jam from nearby orchards. Fun fact: the Shire's old mechanics institutes, like those in Woodend, started as humble hay store conversions for plays and lectures, funded by bazaars. Proof that community spirit built these towns brick by theatrical brick. It's the kind of place where you arrive stressed and leave plotting your tree change. Look out the window. Somewhere down there near Melbourne's northwest fringe is Sunbury, a spot that's punched above its weight in Australian lore since the 1830s. Picture this. Just months after Melbourne's founding, settlers like George Evans built Emu Bottom Homestead from local sandstone in 1836, its deep recessed windows nodding to Old England while wide verandas beat the Aussie heat. Victoria's oldest surviving farmstead, now a heritage gem for events. Fast forward to the 1870s, and squatter King William Clark Jr. erected Rupertswood Mansion, a 50-room showpiece with gardens, a ballroom, and its own railway siding. Likely why the Melbourne Bendigo line curved through town, crossing those lofty heritage bridges over Jackson Creek. But the real kicker? In 1882, after England lost a cricket match to Aussie champs on the estate's paddock, Lady Clark handed over the ashes, a tiny urn with charred bales, to the English captain. Cricket's legendary trophy was born right here, folks. The urn sits in London today. Sunbury boomed as a rail hub and vineyard patch in the 1860s. Think Craigley wines still going strong, before cheap land drew suburban sprawl from the 70s, swelling its population. That old industrial school turned mental asylum on the hill? A sprawling 1879 complex, now part of the university campus. Mild Mediterranean climes mean cool winters around 10 degrees Celsius and balmy summers hitting 30 degrees Celsius, perfect for exploring on foot. Swing by for Rupertswood's tours or Emu Bottom's rustic charm. It's history you can touch, with a cheeky cricket twist that still raises a grin. Yarraville is one of those places where you can feel old Melbourne and new Melbourne overlapping on the same street corner. It began life in the late 1850s as a railwayside village carved out near the Yarra River, its streets named after goldfields to lure prospectors into buying blocks. Industry arrived quickly. Bluestone was quarried from the basalt plain, and big chemical and fertilizer works set up along the river, turning Yarraville into a serious working suburb for more than a century. What you notice today, though, is the village. Around Anderson and Ballarat streets, the commercial heart is a heritage precinct of mostly Victorian and Edwardian shopfronts with residences above, narrow lot sizes, old basalt laneways, and that intimate, human scale that modern planners try to recreate and rarely manage. It's all cafes, small restaurants, bakeries, and independent boutiques now, but inside facades that date back over 100 years. The star of the show is the Sun Theatre, an Art Deco cinema from the 1930s that's been beautifully restored, with multiple small cinemas and an attached bookshop. Locals treat it almost like a living room for the suburb. Around it, you'll find an impressive mix of food: Greek, Italian, Indian, Polish, Mexican, Asian, and more, reflecting waves of migration and more recent gentrification. Despite its industrial past, Yarraville is surprisingly green. Crookshank Park, Yarraville Gardens, Beaton Reserve, and the Stony Creek Corridor give it a string of walking paths, ovals, and picnic spots. The old Yarraville Oval has hosted footy since the early 1900s and still has a classic 1930s grandstand that footy history fans seek out. A fun bit of local color: in the early 1900s, a drapery at Anderson Street had a little band striking up tunes from a corner tower rotunda to entertain Saturday night shoppers. A very Yarraville blend of commerce and community spirit. You've picked an airport that's almost a city in its own right. Melbourne Airport. Most locals just say Tulla is the main gateway to Australia's southern cultural hub, and it runs 24 hours a day, unlike several of the country's other big airports. It opened in 1970, built out on farmland north of Melbourne to replace the old Essendon Airport, which couldn't handle the new generation of wide-body jets. Since then, it's grown into one of the busiest airports in Oceania, serving around 30-plus domestic destinations and long-haul flights across Asia, the Pacific, the Americas, and Europe. The layout is surprisingly straightforward for an airport this size. 4 terminals in one connected complex, a big plus for people dashing between international and domestic flights. Qantas, Virgin Australia, and Jetstar all have major operations here, and it's also the country's heavyweight for domestic air freight. Step outside and you're in classic Melbourne fringe country. logistics warehouses, airport hotels, rental car depots, and then quickly into rolling suburbs and the broad plains leading towards the Macedon Ranges. The airport has its own officially designated suburb, simply called Melbourne Airport, which tells you how central it is to the local economy. Food-wise, the terminals give you a neat preview of the city. Decent coffee almost everywhere, plenty of Asian options, and an increasing number of local name eateries reflecting Melbourne's reputation as a food capital. One fun bit of trivia: because there's no night curfew, many Australians associate this place with odd-hour arrivals. Bleary-eyed 5 a.m. landings from Asia and midnight departures to North America are a kind of unofficial Melbourne rite of passage. And not far beyond the runways, you've got easy access to the city's laneway cafes, the Yarra riverfront, and, if you keep heading northwest, wine country and cool climate hiking in the ranges.